Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about a subject that I've been requested a lot, which is Deadlock's player base. Now, I'm not just talking about Deadlock's player base, but it's actually been requested pretty often. Hey, are you going to talk about the declining player base? Do you plan to make a video about it, etc.? And my response was always, I don't plan to make a video about it because I don't think that it's worth talking about, or I don't have anything to add to the conversation. So instead of talking about it, what we're going to do is we're going to address the fact that it is there, it exists, the player base has been declining, and we're going to talk about what I hope we get for Deadlock in 2025. Before we get into my wish list for Deadlock in 2025, let's talk a little bit about the year 2024, and let's do a small little recap of what happened. So if we look at the Steam charts here, the Deadlock playtest began somewhere around May. So we don't have the data for, before May 20th, but I know some people that got in like late April. And so we know that the playtest as a bigger thing in the form of Deadlock that we know it began probably late April, early May, around that time. And I personally got in around May 21st or 22nd. I can't remember exactly. So that's when the Deadlock playtest kind of really began. And for a long time, it was just kind of like adding players, but not really a whole lot, right? Like the player base grew from 897 concurrent to about, 4K concurrent by the end of July. So over a period of about 2 months, it gained a decent amount of players, but nothing crazy. Then in August, they started ramping up the invitations a lot. So I'm not sure if they just invited more people, or if since the player base was multiplying, like more and more people were inviting their friends, and therefore it just really took off exponentially. But it kind of exploded, which resulted by August 19th, there was 90,000 concurrent players, and this was before the NDA was lifted, meaning that you still technically couldn't really talk about your experience with the game publicly, even though there wasn't really any punishment for doing so other than potentially getting banned if you share footage or whatever. But the NDA was then lifted shortly after on August 23rd, as pretty much a lot of people already knew about it, so there was not really a point in having the NDA anymore. And then it got a huge spike, went up to all the way to 171,000 concurrent players at the beginning of September. And ever since, it's been on a decline. So it maintained a lot of the player base for around a month or so. And then ever since kind of like the end of September, the decline has been pretty sharp. So we've been losing about 7,000 concurrent players every week. It's actually very consistent. So every single week, about 7,000 players, concurrent players are going down. It's starting to diminish a little bit. So now we're only losing about maybe 4,000 to 5,000 a week. But if the trend continues, by early 2025, there's going to be very little players, if any players left at all. So it's important to address that. However, I do want to say that at the beginning, when everybody got exposed to the game, the reception was incredible. If you guys remember, all the big streamers, your Shrouds, like all the players coming from other games, kept saying that the game felt really nice to play. It was a really enjoyable experience. It was a really fun game, and that they thought it was going to be the next big thing. And I think if you asked anyone what they thought of Deadlock, it was mostly positive experience. And I think, honestly, that is still true. So what happened, and what can we hope to get in 2025 to kind of like get back to a good state? One thing I want to mention is that obviously Deadlock is in a playtest, and that does change things. People can call it an alpha, playtest, beta, whatever they want. The reality is the game is in testing. We're getting extremely frequent patches. The mechanics, the core mechanics of the game are being changed, like soul mechanics, the urn, the mid-boss. These are all being changed actively, and these are not the type of changes you would see in a game that is fully released. So Deadlock is definitely different from a fully released game, and you can't treat it as such when you're talking about the player base or issues like that. However, Deadlock is available 24/7 and is very much treated as a live service game by a lot of people, right? So a lot of people play this game every day, or played this game every day, and would treat it as they did any other game that they enjoy. They would treat it the same way that they would treat Marvel Rivals, other than the fact that they knew it was in a playtest, but in their behavior, it would be the exact same, right? They would play with their friends, they would try to be competitive, they would try to play the game. So there's a lot of reasons why the player base, probably declined. I mean, part of that is, I think, most likely just other games. But another big part of that is the fact that Deadlock is kind of in an unstable situation, and that, the game is changing a lot very frequently, and it's hard to keep up with. Even with the videos that I make talking about the patches, etc., those videos always get good views, good engagement, because people want to stay up to date, but it's just really hard to stay up to date, Like, you don't know Like, for example, the soul sharing changes are not explained anywhere except in the patch notes, so you just kind of have to know or watch my videos to even know about them, right? And the game can be kind of confusing in that aspect, and it's just, if you're not playing this game every day, it's really, really hard to keep up with the changes. So I think that's one of the reasons. Now let's talk about what Deadlock can do better in 2025 and how, I think we're going to see a future for Deadlock. And I just want to say that this video is not doomer at all. I think that Deadlock is going to have a great future. I just think that right now it's in a bit of an awkward spot due to a lot of things, and that's totally fine. But I think that most players that tried the game at one point are going to come back whenever the game is in a more stable state, whenever the matchmaking is better, whenever all these other things are fixed. So let's get into the things that I want for Deadlock in 2025. First thing that I want for Deadlock in 2025 is more heroes. We have some heroes. If we look at the cast of heroes, there's a bunch of new heroes that are hero labs, but we haven't had a new hero added to the core game since Mirage, and I think it's been over 2 months at this point. And I think Deadlock really needs more heroes if it wants to thrive. Right now, the gameplay diversity is severely hindered by the fact that there's not enough heroes. There's 22 heroes in Deadlock, and a game of Deadlock has 12 heroes, right? So what that means is that in a game of Deadlock, you're seeing more than half the cast of heroes just kind of like by default. If you, on top of that, introduced bans and whatever, then the games become very, very similar every time. And I don't think that it makes for like the best gaming experience and like just viewing experience in general. So I think it just really needs more heroes. I don't have an exact number, but I think that if we're aiming for a like 1.0 release, I would say that Deadlock should probably aim to at least have 40 heroes roughly, so that we can have like clear counters and matchups and synergies and things like that. Right now there are certain heroes that are counter picks, but really realistically there's very few. And I think in a MOBA it's healthy to have certain heroes that are like that, and it's just fun, right? Let's say they pick Dynamo, you want to have heroes to answer them. Let's say they pick Mirage, you also want to have heroes to answer that, right? Mirage is one of the only heroes that offers global presence. Maybe we need another one so that we can, so that it's not just free for the enemy team. The second thing that I hope for Deadlock in 2025, and this is very related to the first thing, is a proper drafting mode. Right now, I understand why there is no draft, but recently, I've been playing a lot of Circuit by Faceit, which is just an alternate matchmaking third-party service, which is only for high-ranked players right now. Check out my stream if you want to know more. But this service has draft in it, right? So we're drafting every game, doing bans, and I've obviously been scrimming and playing tournaments for a few months as well. And to me, the game is so much more enjoyable when you can select your heroes and kind of ban out heroes. For example, if I think Paradox is super broken, well, I can just ban it out. I don't have to deal with it, right? Or if I want to pick a hero that gets hard countered by Paradox, I can ban it. Or if I don't want my team to have, 5 DPS heroes that are just going to farm, I can also deal with that with the draft. And I can see, oh, my teammates already picked Infernus Ray Taze. I'll pick a hero with a little bit more utility. I'll pick like a Lash. I'll pick a Viscous. I'll pick something else. Now, of course, they've tried to fix that with the 2 frontliner change. So, like, now team comps try to have 2 frontliners. It's kind of unclear what's a frontliner even. Like, there's been no transparency about that. And, like, I see these things and I'm just like, okay, I'm not really sure who my 2 frontliners on the team are. And so it's been weird on that aspect for sure. And I think that having a draft system, really would help the game. But right now with the cast of heroes, it's kind of hard. So I think once we get more heroes, the draft system would be the next thing that I would add. I also really want a proper ranked system. So right now there's a lot of, things like, it's not really ranked. I mean, it is ranked, but at the same time it's not, because even if you're at a high rank, even if you select the extra competitive queue, realistically, like, are people taking it that seriously? Are they communicating that much, etc.? Like, people are just treating it like a regular game of Deadlock, which is completely fine, by the way. But I just think that, it's good to have a competitive mode. Right now, I don't think it's good because there's not the player base for it, and you don't want to split up the player base any further than you have to. But I think if we get back to healthier player base numbers, we should bring back a more defined ranked mode. I think we tried the thing where your rank update once a week. Don't really think it was that nice. I think some people liked it, but I think the general consensus was that it felt kind of weird not having your rank update after every win or loss. A lot of people like the instant gratification, such as myself. And I think that in general, a ranked mode is going to benefit the game in 2025 if we get back to a healthy player base. I want to talk a little bit about the matchmaking. A lot of people have been complaining that the matchmaking has been bad, and I think it's true. I don't think that the matchmaking does a perfect job. I think right now it's a mix of a couple things, but I think the way that rank is being calculated is definitely probably to blame to an extent, right? Like, since ranked is like kind of like is there but isn't there, it's kind of hard to know people's skill level sometimes. And I think that there's just a lot of people that are just like not in the proper ranks, whether they're ranked too highly or not ranked high enough. And I think that overall, when you look at a match, the average rank looks correct, but the ranks in game are not. Like, what I mean is, it might say average rank is Phantom 3, but maybe in those players, in the Phantom 3 players, you have a player who actually should be an Ascendant player, another one who actually should be more of an Oracle player. So I think matchmaking does need to be addressed. I know they've been working on it, and I think that a lot of the kind of like failures of matchmaking are exacerbated by the fact that the player base is smaller than it should be right now. And the smaller the player base is, the worse it gets, unfortunately. So it's kind of been this like negative feedback cycle where people are leaving because matchmaking is bad, which is making matchmaking worse, and therefore like more people are leaving, and it's just like so on and so forth, right? So I think it does need to be looked at, but I do think that some of the problems will be fixed by just having a bigger player base once again. Last but not least, I think that one of the most important things for Deadlock, if they want, you know, the game to have a large player base and maintain it, right? And that's an if, because right now they haven't not really put any effort into getting a player base or maintaining it. But if they want that for Deadlock at the moment, I think they need player retention tools, and I think that they know that. Right now, there's really no reason to play Deadlock other than like you enjoy the game, which is fair, but let's be real, like people enjoy cosmetics, people enjoy battle passes, people enjoy events and all that kind of stuff that other games that are released like Dota or Counter-Strike, etc. might have. And I think that if you want to keep the player base, you have to implement these things, right? Like cosmetics are a big one. For example, people are already doing skins. Like just earlier I was looking at some modding things, and I saw some really cool skins, like for example the Christmas Dynamo, which I just installed, and it's sick. And if there were skins in the game, I think that that would add a lot of enjoyment for people in the game, even though it sounds silly, and it would, you know, help people stay in the game. And if you had a battle pass where you gained levels, etc., like it's something that works in a lot of games. And I think that if Deadlock wants to retain its player base, you know, it has to implement features like this. Of course, these are not the type of things you would expect to find in a playtest, which is why Deadlock doesn't have it. Deadlock has no monetization. It has no way to monetize its player base because its purpose is to gain data right now. We don't know how long they want to gain data for. Do they want to do this for a year, 2 years? But my guess is that if the player base dwindles to a point where they can no longer gather data, they will do something about it. And right now, we are headed in that direction if the trend continues. With that being said, I want to take a couple seconds to talk about something, which is my channel. I am dedicated to continuing to make Deadlock content for as long as the game's around, and I really hope that the game has a bright future. But obviously, with the player base diminishing, it's been affecting my, you know, viewership numbers on both my stream and my YouTube. So if you'd like to support the channel and help me continue making videos, check out in the description. I'll have some ways to support me. Realistically, obviously, subscribing and watching the videos is the #1 way. But if you'd like to donate, you can become a member on YouTube. You can become a Twitch subscriber, use your Twitch Prime sub there, etc. All these things monetarily help the channel, and it's greatly appreciated. So sorry for the little promo, but thank you for the support. I appreciate it. That's pretty much it for me for Deadlock. So I think that 2025 should be a good year for Deadlock. I'm very hopeful. I know a lot of people are kind of like dooming about the game. I personally am not in that camp at all. I think that Deadlock, from a balance perspective right now, is actually in a pretty good spot. Like, I don't dislike this patch as much as I thought I would. I thought I would dislike this patch, but it's actually not that bad. I think it's a pretty decent patch. A lot of the heroes feel fairly balanced. I mean, there's a couple outliers for sure that need to be toned down, but I don't think that there's a single bad hero right now, and I think that's really a good spot for the game. So if you guys haven't played Deadlock recently, I encourage you to maybe give it another shot. Of course, if the matchmaking is bad and you're just not having fun, take a break. You know, you don't need to play the game if you guys aren't having fun. Just take a break, go play other games, and I'm sure that a lot of you will come back because other games right now just don't feel as good as Deadlock does. Speaking from experience, of course, this is just my opinion, but I just think that Deadlock has a combination of so many things that make the game exciting and fun to play that people will come back. Thank you for watching. It was a pleasure, and I will see you next time.